occurs to me before I get going, I probably ought to do some explanation. So Rivnuts, awesome tool. Mine, sometimes I have trouble with the freaking unscrewing portion of it coming undone, and I have to fix that. But you also saw me put some silicone on the Rivnuts before I set them in there, trying to protect that metal as much as possible. Using simple stainless steel flanged button heads, M6, so metric style. I did clearance those holes just slightly over, so that way I've got room to play around with it and get it to fit right, because I do expect some of my holes may have wandered. That's probably the worst one right there, that the Rivenut didn't really, I don't know what it did there. It's bulging the Linex out versus that one where it's set nice and in. So hopefully that's not a big problem. I did get one inside here. Ooh, I need to drill that hole out. I can't get one in here without taking the tire off to reach that, so I'm just going to put a regular screw back into that one. And someday later I'll pull that out and do it right. So many someday laters. But yeah, using this stainless hardware instead of their stuff, a lot better. So I'm not sure if that rubber gasket is actually that much value to me. If you had a painted truck, if you're sure and certain would want it on there. I had a much easier time doing without it and getting all of these aligned. And there's your problem with doing the Nutserts. You get a slight little misalignment in the hole, and you will cross thread that thing in a heartbeat, and then you're screwed. And I did it. I did it up here on this one. Ooh, still, it's a little warm. I can't get that out unless I tear this whole thing off, and I'm not really willing to do that. It's on pretty solid. I'll get this one in. But I'm kind of screwed there. Once you break that Nutsert loose from the sheet metal and it turns, you're hosed. What helps is one of these hexes with a ball on it, because you can get in there and you can turn it and thereby push it into, because this one was pretty bad, but you turn it and push it, get it to line up better, because it misaligns a little bit. You can push and force it gently into alignment to where it actually gets the threads the way it should. You cross thread, you end up in this situation, and I'm kind of hosed on that one. I'm going to leave it for now, because I still have to tear these back off, and that's the whole idea of these Nutserts, is I can pull them on and off at will. I don't know if I'm gonna leave that on there. I don't think I'm gonna do them on the other ones. Again, I got the Linex, which protects this truck pretty well. I'm not on bare paint, so I don't know if that's value added for me. It's definitely more of a pain in the butt. Yeah, I use the hole punch to get it through. That's the way I would suggest doing it. But when I tear this apart to do the sheet metal work underneath, once I've got some gas from my welder, win, win, win. Everything's win. I'll probably remove this. I don't think I'm going to do it on the other 4. This here for me is trial and error, learning how to do things, figuring it all out. That's the way I go about things. So, yeah, let me finish up. I think with this one, I'm going to drill this plastic out just a hair, so I can pull it away, drill it out, get an easier alignment with it so I don't cross thread another one. Kind of have the same situation up in here. I'll drill it out a little bit and then see if I can get a better alignment with my M6 threads. Alright, back at it. With this one, I'm using one that's not flanged, just a regular button head. I'm drilled it out. That's a little nerve-wracking to do that, but drilled it out so it's got one of those white caps and I can put the black button head covers on it. But seems to be neatly enough. I'm out of those though. Yeah, that little bit of overdrill, and I prefer a hand tool for these things. I do not want to crank it down with one of these because you'll cross thread it in a heartbeat. That little bit of clearance made that go in nice and smooth, and it's holding nice and tight. See that? Now I got it in there. And you just get one of these black button heads, snaps over. That way that doesn't, it's not as obtrusive or I don't know what the word I'm looking for, apparent that there's some hardware underneath here. Alright, when doing Nutserts, a couple words of wisdom on this one. You can tell when they're nice and flat and flush, they're good. That one's not so much. It peeks out on that side. And I can look up under here and see what's going on in there. I can see if the actual knurls have billowed out like they're supposed to. One of the things to do is when you've got the Nutsert tool in there, press against the steel, then operate everything, the 2 handles, and that'll get you a much flatter there, a better bite. So these ones are ones that are probably going to cause me problems with making sure I'm aligned. The other thing that occurs to me is I'm putting silicone on here. Might have been a better idea to use some acrylic latex caulk instead that's paintable. Silicone's not. So if you're doing this around something that's paintable, maybe you might want to think of that. I'm not so concerned about it because Linex, not paintable. To deal with any misalignments I've got, because I got that one, because this one's going to go that way, not straight in, because it's fairly misaligned right there. I'm going to work with it. I got in there with a flashlight. I can see what's going on there. It seems to have a decent bite, but not as good as I might like. Tearing these out, not a fun trick. One of the things I'm dealing with here on the front driver's side, when I got all that misalignment, what I figured out, go bigger on the holes. The flange heads will hold. They'll get enough bite on that. And one of the things with this is when they're punching these holes at factory, they're not, that's why I was having trouble with their hardware getting those little button covers over, is because their holes were off and they're too tight in this pocket, so you can't get that button head cover on it. So if you're doing this with their hardware and not going to do Nutserts, I would also suggest drilling these out a little bit so you've got more room to play. But I went way up. I think I was doing 1/4 inch. I went one more size up to get a little bit better bite and a little bit better opening so I can actually clearance these things. But otherwise, that's probably all the words of wisdom I have on that one, on how I'm doing this one. Using the Nutserts so I can take them off anytime I want or replace them fairly easily. Alright, so there it is, part 2, putting my hardware in. In an ideal world, I would have had that hardware to begin with and would have done it that way to begin with, but my life's not an ideal world. I do what I can when I can. A couple hours every morning that I can get work done, I do it. A lot of them missing right there, those 3, because I need to remove the snorkel to put them on. Not going to do that. Again, ideal world. This is not. I'll do that on another day. Probably about the same time I want to go patch all the sheet metal underneath these things. For now, I think they'll be fine. I just won't want to let it go too long because I don't want rust to set in. I mean, I'm in a desert, but we do use salt on these roads. I usually do keep the truck pretty clean. That's one of the things I'm looking at that this will help, is now that's less splash on the body itself. I'll still get it muddy. To put the mud flaps back on here, I'm going to need to move that axle forward. I keep saying that. One of these days I'll get to do it. But hope this gave you some ideas. If you're planning on doing the Bushwackers on your own truck, give you some thoughts about how to do it. If you're trying to do Rivenuts somewhere, some thoughts on how to make those go a little more successfully. You come this far, appreciate you watching. We'll catch you on the next one.